Josepha Guillaume here in my first ever own podcast, not as a guest in another podcast, but my own podcast. I have been procrastinating with this podcast. I had made scripts, I started taping it, but for some reason it just didn't feel right, and now I decided to go unscripted and just speak to whatever comes to my mind. So I'm going to try to keep this under 30 minutes because ain't nobody got time for that, okay? But I am going to try and address all the things I am working on, and not just me, a whole lot of other people, and why am I doing that, and so forth. So, as you notice, I'm Belgian. English is not my first language, even though I wrote several books in English and a whole lot of articles that have been published over the years. So bear with me, but here goes. So what I'm about is species appropriate management, care and training of horses. And why? Why? Because if something is species appropriate, that means that works best for that species. In very simple terms, if you have a car that is designed to drive on diesel or electricity, you do not put gas in it. So that's the same for horses. So horses are animals that need to roam free all the time. And that's the way their hooves are built, their physique are built, the way they are built. Their digestive system needs the constant movement. Their hooves that are sort of assistant hearts, in fact, and need the movement to function correct. And the whole system is designed that way. They sleep under 2 hours per day, if that. Mostly it's a lot less. And really laying down and sleeping often is not more than 10 minutes even. So there's that. Then there is the nutrition they need, which is mostly fiber without sugar. And the problem is that grains, starch, grass that is actually cultivated to fatten up cattle, all that sort of thing that we have been feeding our horses for the last, I don't know, maybe 3-4 decades, or longer, is not good for them, especially if they cannot work the sugars off the way they have been in the past, when horses were still used for everyday life and everything we used them for, which I want to go back to in a minute. Firstly, I want to say that if you want to keep your horse healthy, then you have to find a way to allow your horse to live as he is designed to. So in simple terms, this means free movement, 24 hours a day with a herd buddy, at least one, preferably more, and nutrition that consists of fiber, fatty acids, protein, and a low possible amount of sugar, starch, and grain. It's very simple. And what that will do, that will relieve symptoms of all sorts of common diseases. And if the horse is still healthy, it will prevent a lot of common diseases. Because just because something is common doesn't mean that it is normal. There's a difference. Because something is common, people will start to think, well, that's just the way it is because it's so common. But if you look at certain things, it doesn't have to be common because it's not normal. So when people live around a lake that is heavily filled with toxics from some sort of factory, as an example, and the people around this lake, their cancer rates go up way high. So cancer becomes common in that community around that lake. To them, maybe cancer is common, so normal. But people that live away from the lake don't have the high cancer rates. So because they have cancer as common doesn't mean that it is normal. It isn't. The same it's for horses that are prevented to move freely at least 12 hours a day, but preferably more, and are fed a diet that is not appropriate to their species, develop a lot of common diseases, but they are actually not normal. So it's easy to look into that actually, and I explain it in my book, and I explain it over and over again, and a lot of other people are explaining it, and science backs it up. So yeah, I would say get on board of that train and you will enjoy your horses much more and longer. And these things are, as I said, simple. Which brings me to the following. People often get angry at me when I say that horses need to live species appropriate and they need to live, move freely with buddies and all of that. And they say, well, Josepha, I have my horse in livery and I don't have any choice. They don't let the horses out much, or only in individual paddock. And what do you want me to do? Are you saying I shouldn't have horses? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that you look into this species appropriate husbandry and management and start to understand why it is important to you, because you want to keep your horse healthy, right? And you don't want high vet bills, because that's all of our equestrians' worst nightmare, isn't it really? So you want to keep your horse healthy and happy, I think, because you love your horse. So if you are in that situation where you cannot, when you not can keep your horses at home, I understand that then it is difficult to fix that. But what I'm asking of you is to not just accept the status quo and not get angry at people who say things such as keeping a horse in a stall is not species appropriate and not healthy. Just acknowledge the fact that this is true, even though you are in a situation where you can not do anything about the fact that your horse is stabled too much. Just accept the fact that that is not healthy. And then, when you open yourself up to that, start looking for solutions. Maybe there is a different place where your horse can go. There are more and more people in Europe, and maybe outside, I don't know, who sort of rent a field together and then set up a track system and then and who will take care of the horses together and the bills together and so forth. I've seen this working. Maybe it's not ideal for some people, but I've seen it working. Or maybe there is a place you didn't know before that maybe is even closer to your home. I get messages all over the world, all of the time, of people saying, well, I started looking for a different solution and I actually found it closer to home at this farmer or at this private stable or whatever. Or there is this new initiative coming up where people build a track or a more species appropriate housing. Start looking, start asking, start talking, and start looking for solutions. Why not? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Also, you're paying a lot of money for your livery and you're actually not satisfied and your horse is not satisfied. So why not keep talking to the owner of the livery and explain to him what you want? And maybe there are a lot of people told me about that as well. They were able to rent a field from the livery owner and put up their own track there. I've seen this also, seen that across Europe. And I heard of it in Canada and the United States and so forth, also the UK. And even if it's only for the summer, you know, places like the UK, they have a lot of rain, a lot of mud. I understand that this might be more difficult also with the daylight and everything. But if it were at least for the summer, you would be making progress. Of course, we want this year round for horses. And I'm telling you, mud is not a problem for horses, and you can make it very easy to have a dry plot with like these wood sheets. We call them OSB, or rubber mats that are for outside. Sometimes you can even pick them up free or secondhand or whatever. Just start thinking in possibilities and in solutions instead of problems is what I'm trying to convey here. So yeah, and also when you start doing that, it's loads of fun to start thinking about how to make the habitat for your horse more fun and more exciting and more practical and so forth. This can also be a very great hobby. And I just wanted to get that message across first. Then there's the second thing where people always think that I want to end equestrian sports. And people even say to me, well, you're ending equestrian sports. Thank you for the compliment that you think that is within my power. It really isn't. And if it was, would I end it? To be honest, how it's going at the moment and the last 30 years, I mean, I'm old. I will be 50 next month. And I've been on this fight for, lack of a better word, for 3 decades now. I mean, it was the beginning of the 90s when everything started with the whole rolkuur, I don't know how you would say that in English, low deep around in the dressage sport. But it's not just dressage. A lot of common sense has gone out of the window within equestrian sports. And the problem, I think, is that there is a lot of money going around and a lot of prestige going around, which wasn't there before. So people were not as interested in equestrian sports then. I remember that there weren't so much people watching the events and all that, and it was also maybe especially for people that weren't interested in equestrian sports, it was very boring. And I think that the cure on music and better marketing and all that has really improved how people see the sport, and they started to really watch it on television, go to the events, and this all brings money. And then when people are going to watch, then the sponsors come, and with sponsors come pressure on the riders, pressure on the owners, pressure on the trainers to fulfill certain, I don't know, maybe promises or contracts or whatever. And of course, people have no patience. Everything has to go fast. And when we look at the Spanish riding school in Vienna, for instance, the education of these horses starts when they are 4 years old, after they had a very species-appropriate upbringing. And then the schooling starts very slowly in hand first, and they train one stallion with 2 or 3 people often. Everything goes very slow, everything is very positive reinforcement based. And their education is complete when they are between 12 and 15. Yeah, 12 and 15. So most horses are in the Grand Prix around 7 these days, so that's very young. That used to be an exception 30 years ago. Now it's almost the rule. So they start the horses far too young, they wean the horses too young. All of that makes that horses need to be forced to perform. That's also why all these horses, most horses actually, and also the horses that win, place 1, 2, and 3, they have the blue tongues, and we have massive amount of evidence of that. Come on, even the FEI admitted to it. We have the atrophied muscles in the back and the ditch before the withers. These are not fit horses, as people are saying. These are fit horses, and when we look at your horses, they are just fat. You can actually see the ribs on Owen and Innocencio, and still they have this very well developed back, even at ages of 21 years. Innocencio is now 23, Owen was 29. They still have well-developed backs. That's no accident. That is species-appropriate management and correct training without force. Training that is in line with their natural movement, with their biomechanics and so forth. So, most horses within equestrian sport are first and foremost started too young, and they want exercises of movements of them that are actually or should be natural movements, because as I explain in my book, the movements we call dressage movements are actually their language. So they show them anyway. What you want to do is to get them on cue for you, right? So that should not be so difficult. But what horses need to perform these exercises is first and foremost strength, and secondly flexibility, but also, and this is much overlooked, the will to do so. So when a horse does a passage en piaffe, he does so because he feels proud of himself, he wants to show pride, or he wants to impress a partner, or he wants to just impress, if it's a stallion, another stallion, and so forth. So it comes forward out of joy or necessity. Now, to me, a collected horse is like a human smile. You cannot force a smile. Collection of a horse comes first and foremost from his mind, from his will to do so. It's like a smile. It's like an emotion. It's like a feeling. You cannot enforce it. If you want your horse to truly collect, then you have to make him happy and proud so that he wants to collect. You cannot enforce this. What we are seeing in equestrian sports on an Olympic level is not collection, mostly. When I do see it, often these riders are not placed high. They are placed 7th or even lower. So it's more like somebody would hold a gun to your head and say smile, and you would go like, it's not really a smile, is it? So it's like smiling at gunpoint to me. Or do you know these dancing bears that are taught to dance on this hot platter? That's what it looks like to me. And then you're going like, yeah, but Josepha, you are not an Olympic rider. What do you know about that? And it's like, that's insane, you know? You have to see me as somebody that can look under the hood. I am a rehab trainer and a classical trainer. And I have now, I don't even know how many horses that I had in my hands that were last resort horses, horses that vets had given up on, horses that were injured, severely traumatized, and in all ways they couldn't do anything anymore. And I was able to heal them with my species-appropriate management and positive reinforcements, biomechanics, and so forth. So I know, and many with me, there are loads and loads of trainers out there that do not do competitive dressage or jumping or whatever, but they still understand biomechanics of a horse. And they know what is natural and how a horse's musculature is developed and so forth. Imagine somebody that does the maintenance of Formula One racing cars and then saying, well, he didn't take that turn very well about the driver. Nobody's going to say to him, well, you don't drive Formula One. They're not going to say that. Or when somebody says, well, they didn't make that goal in football. Nobody's going to say, but yeah, you don't play football on that level. You cannot decide whether that's true or not. Or he grabbed the other player, that should be a red card, but he didn't receive a red card. Nobody's going to say, what do you know about it? You don't play that level. It doesn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with being on that level. You can have knowledge about that without being on that level. Even more so, I don't have any interest in competitive dressage. I only have interest in horse health and happiness. That's what I'm all about. And I'm not saying that equestrian sports is impossible with happy and healthy horses. I think it is possible. And that's my goal, to try and make that happen. Now, to go back to where people say that I'm trying to enter sport, I am really not. The only thing I am doing is trying to change the sport for the betterment of the horses. The only way to do that is to explain to people what is going wrong within the sport, to show them that the top horses, once again, all have atrophied muscles in the back, which shows that they are not trained correctly and that they are forced, that they do not show correct collection, no true collection, and they are leg movers, not back movers. Yeah, they weigh their shoulders and not their hindquarters and so forth. This is all actually, when pointed out, not difficult to see, especially if you've seen horses moving correctly. And if you want to see horses moving correctly, look at horses that have never been trained, such as the horses in the Colorado Basin, for instance. There you see correct moving horses. That's an example. But there are also many horses that are trained correctly, as for instance a lot of horses in the Spanish Riding School of Vienna, who can do these exercises daily, and it's much heavier work than a Grand Prix dressage test of 5 minutes, because they also have to do high school jumps, and they can do this without trouble up to 27 years of age, and then they are still very healthy, they have lots of zest. It's just that then they get their retirement because they deserve it, not because they are broken. And they live up to 30, 35, even 40 years. So Neapolitana Nima, he was over 40 years, and he was still very fit to his last day. And that's how it should be. I had a horse, and I always have horses who I rescued. So they have lots of physical and mental traumas before they come to me, and still they get very old and in a very good condition. So, and it's not to blow my own horn here. It's just to say that it's possible. It's very possible if you just treat a horse as a horse, let him live as a horse, and you can build your training on top of that. Which brings me to the next thing. Athletes, happy athletes, locked up in a stable for half a day or even longer. You know, most horses within high level or high end, how you want to call it, elite riders, elite sport or whatever, I don't really care. They are often kept in the stable, only hand grazed and trained, or they go in a walker and all that sort of thing. But that is never going to replace free movement, preferably on different surfaces, 24 hours a day. But many of these horses are even locked up all the time. And you can say to me, oh, Josepha, that's not true at all. It is. It is. When horses get out at least 8 to 12 hours a day, that is an exception and not the rule. I know, because I've been around the equestrian world on 2 continents for over 30 years. Longer, actually, because I started riding when I was 7 and I'm almost 50 now. So that is just how it is. And the reason is that these trainers and riders, because these horses are so expensive, they are afraid that they get injured outside. Coffee. The irony is that that horses are much more prone to injury and all these common inflictions and illnesses that happen all the time, which are common and not normal, because they are stable. So many horses have accidents in stables, but that we find normal. And so many horses have health issues because of being too stable too much, standing still too much, like colics and problem with their hooves, and then people have to put shoes on them because else they are lame. They have to cover up the lameness with the shoes. Also a thing I could do a whole podcast about. And that is the problem really. But the crazy thing is, if you're training an athlete to do athletic things, imagine a human having to live in a very small chamber all the time, only come out for like 3/4 of an hour training, in which the human is also very much forced to do things he's not ready to do, or range of motion he's not ready to do, and then put back in that little room all the time. Nobody would do that to a human athlete because there is no benefits to that. Why are people doing that to horses? It blows my mind. Now imagine if these so-called elite trainers and riders would build track systems for their horses to be on. Track systems are very, very safe. They're designed that way to be safe. Horses can always go round and round and round if they are in fights. No corners to get caught up in. Then the horses start walking all day, constantly. And you could even put in different surfaces which hardens their hooves, their tendons and so forth. And then they will build muscle from just walking all day in a relaxed posture, head up, head down. And you could put all sorts of passive physio in there so that horses would, go up to trees and up to bushes and sideways to bushes and put the hay in all different places and so forth. So they would be constantly training themselves. And then the training the rider, the trainer does, would be built on top of that. Imagine the results. Imagine the results then. Also, these horses then are much more safe to ride. They are much more calm. They're much more agile. They won't fall over or touch their own legs and so forth. And these horses would also be much more calmer in a different environment. So they don't have to hold on to the two bits and press themselves against these ridiculous cells we have nowadays with those knee panels that the riders brace against, which are also preventing you as a rider to be loose in your pelvis and follow the movement of the horse. I can do a whole podcast about saddles as well. So I sound very negative now about general elite riders, but I don't mean to be mean. I don't want to put anyone down or proclaim myself as being better or anything. That's not what I want to achieve. What I want to achieve is that people open their eyes to how horses needlessly suffer. They really suffer. Horses are social animals, and they also can bear such amounts of pain before it becomes really visible. And then we don't even have discussed how horses are medicated all the time, because they get all these mental and physical problems because of being locked up and because of having to endure forced training, but also the stress of being solitary, not having a family or friends, not being able to play outside with other horses. And I hear people saying, yeah, but this rider has his horses playing together. Yeah, these are exceptions. That should be the norm, but it is not. We can all be honest about that, whether it is racing or dressage or jumping. It doesn't matter. As soon as it's equestrian sports and there are a lot of things at stake, money, prestige, I don't know, medals, business opportunities, horses are being locked up and kept safe, which they are not. So yeah, we all need to talk about that. We need to acknowledge that this is going on. Now, I know a lot of people are afraid that when more and more gets exposed, and we are just the tip of the iceberg here, that the sport will be prohibited at some point. But don't shoot the messenger here. Shoot the people who are doing this. Shoot the people who should know better. The judges, the FEI that isn't doing anything. With shoot, I don't mean actually shoot. Let me be clear. I mean it metaphorically. Please don't shoot anybody. So the fact that people are trying to influence the sport in a way that would be beneficial to horses, the only way to do that is to put a spotlight on the systemic abuse that is going on. I see that I already over 30 minutes. Sorry. I'm trying to round it up in the next 15. So yeah, that is a huge problem. Now, the FEI is not going to change anything. I can promise you that. However, thanks to the documentary about Mr. Hellstrand and Project X, public opinion is now very aware of what is going on within so-called elite equestrian sports. Now, a lot of people were so surprised by what was happening, but this has been going on for at least 15 years, and Epona TV has been showing this footage over and over and over, and not just from him, from many other elite dressage riders, but also jumping, show jumping, the racing industry. The images there are just horrible. The many horses that die on and off the track. The age in which horses are weaned and started. I mean, if you think that it's a good thing, I can imagine that you actually love horses. I'm sorry. And at least you should be interested in what I'm saying and think, okay, but why is it wrong? You know, horses' growth plates in the back only close between 5 and 8 years, and they are actually fully an adult around 10 years, maybe 12 years, and they can become 40 or 45 years of age. It used to be normal in a past where we didn't have antibiotics and dewormer and what have we. It was quite normal a very long time ago, but it isn't now. So we're not doing we're not doing a good job at the moment with all the knowledge we have now. Another thing is this book by Junie L. Taylor. I will put it here. I Can't Watch Anymore. Please, if you don't believe what's going on within the sport, read that book and then come back to me. Now, I've seen a lot myself. I am traumatized by the things that I've seen. I am traumatized by the horses that came to me and that I had to help become healthy and happy again. The way they were broken, both in spirit and in body, coming out of the back doors of well-known sports stables. Photographers, equine photographers that do sport events, that have given me material to use, that have PTSD from the things that they've seen. Grooms, so many people have spoken out, but everybody is afraid to say anything. Why is that? Think about that. If you look at Dressage Hub and what Susan has to bear, the attacks, the death threats, the slander. I have some death threats myself. I mean, why? The only thing I want is a horse-first approach, a species-appropriate approach. No force, no punishment, no beatings, positive reinforcement, biomechanical correct training, classical dressage, in short. Why would that be a problem? And if the sport is so good and horses are so happy, then why would my message be a problem? Why? I don't understand. What I and many others want is that the horse gets a horse-first approach, meaning that he can live simply as horses are meant to live. Remember, with the car and electric car doesn't need gas. A horse needs to be out with buddies 24 hours a day to be able to move free. Moving free doesn't mean loading them up and driving them 3 hours into the tundra and then leaving them there. Of course they can have stables, of course they can have care, of course they can have rugs, they can have everything. It just means that they have the choice. You can give them a stable, just make sure the doors are open and that no other horses, when they fight, they can get caught. Just open it up, give them a shelter. Of course, I have nothing against that. I mean, I will show you our place and they have a lot of possibilities to be outside of the weather if they want to. They don't do much, but they can. So you can give your horse all the care on top of the species-appropriate care, and you can build your training on top of that. But it would take more patience, starting later, and more patience. I also think that it would be very good to change, how would you call those, the tests that the equestrians are riding, to make it more natural to the horse and take the pressure off of the riders. I will elaborate on that some more another time because that will take me, I think, maybe 30 minutes by the ideas I have had. And today I read online somebody saying they should measure the rein pressure during the tests. And then if the rein pressure is above some certain amount, they should take points away. These are all things we can do to make it better for the horse. And I'm telling you now, if you are a competition rider, if you were to have your horse move freely with friends on different surfaces all day and have passive physio by the way they would access their food, your horse will be training himself all day, every day, and you can build your training on top of that. Imagine what great results you would have then. How healthy your horse would be, how strong he would be, how flexible he would be. And also, he would be much more eager to work because he had all his free movement. And he can do things with you now. He's not been in the stable all day, cooked up, stressed out, and whatnot. So you can leave those reins longer. You don't have to put the horse in this curl behind the vertical to be safe. I mean, yes, I am angry when I see a lot of that, but I also understand that sometimes people are caught up in the system. And I think we need to break the system completely and start it over from a horse-first approach. And you can still do these competitions, and just we need to adjust them to the horse's needs first. And I think then it can be even more beautiful because there is nothing like the natural movement of the horse and the true true joy of a horse. Isn't that why we all became horse people in the first place? Because we love horses and we love the way they move and we love the way they look when they play and so forth. A training session needs to be like when horses play together. That is what you have to entice from your horse, and actually it is really not that difficult. And then they say to me, well, if you know so well, why don't you do competitions? Even if I wanted to, I have no interest, I can't. I spent all my money and all my resources, all my life on rescuing horses, and they are not suitable for competition, even now. And then when I pointed out that the horses now in the Olympics even, that were awarded first, second, third place, that their gaits were irregular, which is a symptom of lameness. Then somebody had the audacity to say to me that my horses had that too at times. Yeah, duh! Those are rehab horses. They've been through hell and back. I had to bring them back from the death on multiple times. They weren't even alive, weren't even able to walk around like they are now if I wasn't an experienced rehab trainer. So yeah, with all their problems which they have from their past, they will sometimes have some irregular gaits. But it's not because I'm forcing them to I'm not forcing them to anything at all, ever. I'm not. And you want to compare these horses to the best horses in the world. Well, let's compare them. Compare the top line of my older rescue horses with their chronic illnesses to the top line of the elite horses that win the places. What do we see? We see atrophied muscles with the top elites, with the so-called happy athletes, and we see very well-developed muscles on my rehab horses. And it's not just me. It's so many people that aren't trainers at all, that just have horses as a hobby, that have better top lines. And it's not fat. Again, you can see the ribs. It's really muscle. It's the trapezius and the longissimus developed correctly. A horse that has a ditch before the withers and has ditches at both sides of the shoulders, that to me is a rehab horse. I wouldn't even ride that horse. I wouldn't even allow anyone to ride the horse. I would rehab that horse a very long time until the back is completely well developed again, as it should. Waiting for the racing industry and the FEI to improve on horse welfare, that's not going to happen. They are only interested in the PR. They want to make it look as if they are doing something for horse welfare, and maybe once in a while a tiny win is within that, but it's not their goal ultimately. And of course, people could also debate me on that. But it's public opinion and legislation that is going to change things. In the European Union, there is now an investigation going on the welfare of horses and donkeys. And I'm collecting all the research and publications that support our species-appropriate message, and of which there is a lot and keeps coming out more and more and more evidence supporting this. I'm collecting this in an ebook that I am writing at the moment, which is sort of a letter on to legislation, to lawmakers, explaining the species-appropriate message, which in essence is also for the welfare of the planet, because track systems and a rewilding of land where horses reside is very good for biodiversity and getting the CO2 out of the air, the carbon dioxide. So whether you believe in climate change or not is not important. Important is that legislation does, and if you make that point, they are much more inclined to go with that. So this is one of the points I am also making. And I think biodiversity is important, no matter which way you look at the climate change agenda. It's something we cannot do without. I mean, if the bees die out, we die out. So it's that simple, really. So you can help the bees with creating a rewilding and planting local bushes and trees and whatnot alongside your track or in your rewilded environment for your horses, so they have things to nibble on and so forth. And this is much better than having empty paddocks or large stable buildings with separate stables. Also, the European Union is forbidding concrete as per 2050, and they want to phase it out starting 2030. So if buildings with concrete are not allowed for humans, do you think they will be allowed for equines, of which all the research shows that they don't need it? So yeah, I'm working on that. Again, it's not my means to take anything away from anyone. People will say, well, can we just enjoy our horses? Yes, enjoy your horses, but make it priority also that your horse enjoys you and that he enjoys his life and that he has a life outside of your training. That's all I'm saying. And let me end with this. For 6,000 years, horses have done everything for us. They built our society. They were our companions. They fought our wars. They worked our lands. They did everything for us, much to their own detriment. In World War I alone, I think there were over 8 or 9 million horses who died in that war. What more do we want from them? Honestly, I mean, our excuse has always been that we needed horses for our survival. And yeah, that's a good excuse. But we don't anymore in the 21st century. So what are we doing? And we now have the possibility, at least in the Western world, to give them a species-appropriate life. It's so easy. We can do that, especially people that built the enormous large stables with the golden bars and whatever. You have the possibility to build enormous track systems with footing and whatnot. Why don't you? Why don't you? I know change is hard. I know it's hard to change tradition. I know people are scared that if they admit that we are not doing so well for the horse at the moment, that they are scared that they will lose the right to keep horses and train them and whatnot. I understand that. But I honestly think if we go on the way we are doing now, this will most definitely happen. Because public opinion is very negative. And can you blame them? They have a good point. If we change, however, we put the horse first, the species appropriate way first. We do not harm horses anymore. We make them through happy athletes because horses are natural athletes. You don't have to do anything to them to make them an athlete. They are natural athletes. The movement we want from them are natural. So the only thing we have to do is let them be horses and let them stay healthy. And then they are happy. So they are happy athletes. So I think I'm going to stop with that now. I could go on for maybe 10 more hours. But I think that's enough. And I hope this clarifies a lot. If not, ask questions down below or via my email or my website or my Facebook or Insta or whatever. And we'll talk about it some other time. For my next podcast, I will have a guest. I will not tell you who that's going to be. So, I think that's it. I don't want to say anything more at this moment because it's already a very long podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was clear. I hope I taped everything and don't have to do it again. And for all the people that have been supporting me over the last 3 decades or even since last week, thank you very much. I feel like we're doing this together. I don't feel alone anymore. I feel like we are legion. And I love you. I love your horses. And hope to see you in my next podcast. Thank you very much. I love you. Bye-bye. For the love of horses. This was Josepha. See you next time.